From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio. And I have a guest coming to us from probably the most remote location we've had so far, from the island of Sardinia in Italy. Debbie, how do you say your last name, Debbie?
It's just Levitt. Kind of the way it looks.
Just how it looks. Debbie Levitt from PType, which is pty.pe, which is a pretty clever domain. What is it that you do?
Well, PType is a UX agency. So basically, if you imagine a process of coming up with an idea, and then say you've got a website, app, or other idea, normally you go to a programmer or somebody and you say, build this for me. We're the people who come in between the idea and the building, and we say, hold on, let's talk to real users and make sure there's a real problem we can solve. Let's design this thing. Let's test it on real users. And then if everything checks out, then we'll give it to the people building it. So that way we can be sure we're doing something user-friendly, solves problems, people really want it. You shouldn't have any surprises later. So we are that whole user-friendly process in the middle that most people think programmers do or artists do. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, as someone who's, built a ton of websites and worked in, digital marketing for a long time, as well as in physical product development, there's so many thoughts that from the idea of making something to where the product actually happens, where people fail to think about the customer and the end user during that whole process.
Absolutely. And we all know when they've done that because we've all gone to websites and apps and we've said, we felt frustration, confusion, disappointment. And so you can tell when someone hasn't hired a UX person because usually you are fuming or emailing customer service or throwing your phone out the window. So it's very important, and it's really something that everybody should do. It's not just for the big companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like you said, everyone should be doing it, at least considering what is it that the consumer wants to experience when they're, interacting with my product or my website. So how did you get started into UX and product design? How did you that's not the route a lot of people go. So how did that find you?
Yeah, it did. I went to college a billion years ago, and I was double majoring in pre-med and music, as everyone does. And I eventually gave up on the pre-med after taking all of the required courses, including physics with calculus, and dumped that, and then ended up with lots of spare time in my college schedule. So I picked up random stuff for kicks, and I started taking psychology of language, and psychology of music. And these were basically cognitive psych classes that I was taking for fun. And I graduated with a degree in music, which means I can sing to you about cognitive psych. And then after that, I worked in the music business. And then one day in early 1995, a college friend said, hey, you should see this thing, the World Wide Web. And here's how you can learn to make pages. And I taught myself HTML, and I said, I bet people would pay people who know how to make these things. I bet this is going to turn into a business thing. So I started a website design company, but I'm not an artist. So I hired an artist who happened to also be a programmer, which is rare, but he was amazing. And basically I did all the concept side of websites, which in a funny way is UX before I understood it was UX. And so that is the weird accident of how I ended up in an industry most people haven't heard of.
That's true. Now, but it's very common. UX is really common once you get into, startups in Silicon Valley. Like once you get into kind of the bigger companies or companies with bigger ambitions, how can the little guy apply UX into their business?
I think the best way, especially if you're going to try to do it yourself, obviously the bestest way is go out and find a freelancer, an agency, someone like us, or actually us. But if you're going to try to do it yourself, I think the biggest mistake that people make is, especially if they've read like Lean Startup, and that Lean Startup is not the mistake, but Lean Startup says, get out of the building, get away from the mirror, go talk to users. But what I find is people ask customers the wrong thing. They ask them leading, biased questions. Do you like this? Would you buy this? Would your mom buy this? Will you pay for this? And to UX, to marketing, those are great questions. To UX, those are the wrong questions because we're looking for customer behavior, motivation, of course, natural behavior, motivation, and true needs. So typically we're asking, what do you do now? Like, for example, I recently met a startup who says he's got an app that's going to help surfers coordinate going surfing. I don't know. I would be asking, hey, surfers, how do you coordinate going surfing now? What apps and systems do you use? Where are those working for you? Where are your pain points and problems in coordinating surfing? And to see if there's even room or an opportunity to solve their problem. So I think if people want to do UX of the home game, they can start by talking to customers, but asking them better questions. Ask them questions like, how can this be improved? Rather than, do you like it?
Yeah, I think it was interesting because you said they ask leading questions, which are good for marketing. Now, obviously, as a marketer, I completely disagree that those are good questions. And I like the way that you attack that same problem because I think confirmation bias is the thing that really holds a lot of companies back, right? They already have their opinion on what they think is right. And then they ask the questions to make them feel validated in that. And so like sliders on websites are a perfect example of that. Sliders look great for the CEO. He thinks it looks cool, but data
and they fail UX testing every time.
Every time. Like I don't know one that's outperformed a static page. So
yeah, so sliders will fail UX testing every time. So it's interesting that you're saying they also fail marketing testing because they also fail UX testing. They don't match customers' natural behavior. They don't match attention span. Nobody sits there and wants to see all these messages go by. They're not even great on mobile. So it's fantastic that they're failing both, yet so many people still want them and ask for them.
And then they'll ask their friend, hey, what do you think of the website? Oh, it's really cool. Did you like the slider? Yeah, the slider was cool. And then they'll say, hey, look, see, I'm right. I'm like, no, yes. You're just asking the question to a person who's just as biased as you are.
Yes, as you've probably seen me say before, if you're getting a lot of positive feedback from friends, family, people you're asking, if you're hearing your website is great, your writing is amazing, your pictures are fun, if you're not getting any tough love, you're asking the wrong questions and you're asking the wrong people. You should be hearing, even my website, and I do this for a living, you could find flaws on it. There are things I should change and fix. Somebody should be giving you tough love.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think part of it comes down to being willing to have it, right? And so many times in marketing or in UX, people, they say they want to have a good user experience, but not at the sacrifice of having to make any changes. So it's like, okay, if you want to, you can't just wish it into existence, right? You're going to have to change the way that perhaps your company or your product or your website is flowing. So what is, I'm very curious, you have UX and product design agency. Do you guys do product design and UX outside of the digital sphere?
Yes, so actually, a lot of people don't know this. So people think if I say product design, that means I'm going to design them a better chair. But in software development, we actually see software and its features as product. And so product design actually mostly refers to software, systems, websites, and apps. So I'm not the right person to design your chair.
Gotcha.
I recently had someone email me on my site and say, can you design a perfume bottle? And of course, I contacted my artists, like, can you guys design a perfume bottle? And they were like, okay, that's not our core strength, but yes, we can. So,
right.
Hypothetically, yes, we can. I have people on staff who do CAD modeling and
right.
3D modeling and rendering. So think of product more as that digital product. Websites, apps, software, systems, software as a service, enterprise, all that stuff to us is the product.
So in my world so I'm kind of the marketing bridge between the guy who comes up with the product to sell and then like the tech team, right? So not quite on the UX side, but bridging the strategy across the two. And so a lot of the conversations I have with clients and developers are probably similar to that you have on your team of, okay, what's the actual goal and what's actually happening? Where's the disconnect? What when you're doing that with a new app or things, how often do you see a software as a service company or something like that, and that you look at it and you're like, man, this was built all by the tech team, or this was built all by the marketing guys, right? And not finding that bridge, or that everything flows together.
I have to laugh because I'm batting 1,000 in my 20 plus years of doing this, of looking at something and knowing exactly who designed it, from your junior graphic designer who's out of college 2 years, to your offshore tech team, to the CEO, to your product manager. I can look at something and usually totally know exactly who designed it, and it hurts. Or like, I think my last successes were your graphic designer who says she can do UX. And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? So I do see this a lot. Everyone thinks they can do UX, and everyone thinks they are a designer of software systems because everyone has a hand in it. You as the marketer say, well, I'm influencing this. Maybe I'm a software designer of some sort. The programmers build it. They say, we know where things should go. We're designers. The CEO says, I have the idea, or the product guy or gal says, I have the idea. So the problem in my world is everyone thinks they are the designer of the system.
Yeah, there's been a big shift in marketing, and I guess it's a small shift, but it's rippling. And for me, it's been the biggest thing that's impacted how I've approached business as a whole. And that's never trust your own assumptions, right? So like the CEO comes into something and says, oh, I have this amazing idea. Or the marketer says, hey, I really think that this sales funnel, like that's what we do, will work. And it's like, and everything is test everything. The new thing is test everything, see what works, make adjustments, be willing to be wrong, be willing to admit like, hey, my theory of, the button being green didn't beat the button being red, or whatever those little basic split tests are. So we really work on like micro testing, and really getting to user-driven data as fast as possible. Now,
yeah, you would fit right into my world in that sense. And I would tell you to make the button blue because it's colorblind friendly.
There you go. That's awesome. And we'll see if if data supports it, right? If it out converts. Because that brings up a whole fascinating thing of, if the fact, like percentage wise, right? Let's say green beats red, just theoretically, but blue is more colorblind friendly. Like the next question has to be, well, is that percentage of people being colorblind that are buying it greater than the people that bought it because it was green? And do we care about those things? Like, it's so fascinating that all of these things have to be considered, right?
They should be, and many people don't, but I love to specialize in what we call accessibility, which is how do we make these things so that people with vision, mobility, and other issues are included. And this really came to light last year. I don't know if you remember when the NFL decided, Nike redesigned the uniforms and they put an entire team in red, an entire team in green, and colorblind people, people who are red-green colorblind, which is roughly 8% of men and 2% of women, saw both colors as the same. So there are these great screenshots of the game where nobody who was colorblind could tell the teams apart. And it really helped bring a little bit of a light to this, that they should have had an accessibility consultant say, that's not colorblind friendly. And many former football players were tweeting, I'm colorblind. I can't tell what's going on in this game. So I would say to you that it's worth considering that there are people who are colorblind. When a product tends to skew a little more male, I worry about colorblindness a little bit more, just because it is in 8% of men versus 2% of women. So heavily female things, yes, I want to consider it, but I worry about it less. And especially I want to see what that button is against, because if colorblind people see red and green, again, red-green colorblind people see red and green as shades of gray. Sometimes if you have it on top of a colorful photo or something grayish, the end. Yeah. So I can't just say there's always a hard and fast rule to always use a blue button. It's really about creating contrast. But I also care about how that looks to the colorblind person. And there are filters you can run on graphics to see how it looks to the colorblind person.
Fascinating. And I think the reason why UX is so important, one, is just the awareness that it's even, like, understanding that it's important is the first thing. And then
Yes.
understanding that like not everyone is a UX expert, right? Just like not everyone's a copywriter, just not, and that you need different pieces and different skills. And have you noticed that it's a skill that's more and more accepted in the business community, or is there an uphill battle with it?
Yeah, based on my work, I worked for about 7 years in San Francisco at famous companies, at agencies with startups. What I find is many people are starting to figure out UX, but there's still a huge disrespect for it. There's still a sense of UX. Those are people who just draw boxes on a page, and well, they should just need a few hours for that. And well, I could do that. Why can't I draw boxes on a page? I actually worked at an agency, a digital marketing agency, that brought me in because they'd been messing up their UX, giving it to graphic designers. They wanted to give it to a real expert, and I worked there for months. And finally, I sat down with the CEO because I wanted to tell him all of my ideas on how I was going to bring more UX business to his agency. And he yelled at me for 2 hours. Why do I need you? My graphic designers can do wireframes. And why don't your wireframes have final typography and real stock photos? And just yelled at me for actually 2 hours straight. And I mostly sat there and then the next day I quit. I walked out of that meeting and quit. So I find that even in San Francisco, where people think, ooh, center of tech, everybody will know this stuff, I still find people misunderstand it. They disrespect it. I've been working at big famous companies. I walk into a Tuesday meeting and they say, can you have final designs for us on Thursday? And I'm like, do you know what a UX process is? Do you know I don't just draw boxes on a page and go, I like that?
And I think that's the biggest disconnect, right? Is people think that, well, you're a UX specialist, therefore you already know what the consumer is going to want, right? And that you're saying, no, like part of the process is we have to start by going and asking and like doing research, right? Is that kind of, at least
I need data. Even if someone doesn't give me the time and budget to do research and to do the asking, typically I'm asking somebody for data, somebody in marketing, somebody in customer experience, hello call center, customer support. Can I see your tickets? I'll read app reviews. There's still research that I can do even if I'm not talking to customers. Some companies are running things like 4C or Hotjar. I want to watch the videos of people stumbling through the website or stumbling through the app. So that's research, even if I don't get to talk to customers, and I need time to review that, synthesize it, look for the patterns. So I think there's just there's still a large misunderstanding. There was another meeting I walked into last year with a cross-functional agile software development team, and they all looked at each other and said, who's going to design this? And the engineering architect was like, I guess I will. And I'm like, does anyone know what I do? So it still seems to be unknown. People think we're all artists and we do things kind of on a whim. And I'm not an artist at all. I'm a terrible artist. I am a musician.
That's funny. You can sing about not being able to draw is what I hear. Yeah. So giving some people some examples of this, you illustrated an example of two different types of concepts that are very different products, like a Disney World and a SeaWorld, right? Maybe expand on that.
Yeah, so that is when we look at so both companies have similar goals in a sense. They both want to be destinations. They both want to be parks. They both want to be great for families. They both have hotels and food and rides and shows. And so you could say Disney World and SeaWorld are trying to be really similar things, just like you and your competitor might be doing very similar things. But it's the execution of the ideas that separate these companies. And it can be that differentiating factor for you as well. I have competitors. There are other people out there doing UX. How do I make myself different? There must be something in the way that I present the company or execute on our concepts that will help set us apart. So obviously Disney World has taken one direction, and it's my opinion, you can disagree, but I think they're the masters of customer service, making sure people are safe, happy, enjoying themselves, efficient. SeaWorld, on the other hand, it has been dropping, full of controversies and problems. And obviously, but you could say, well, but they've got whales and Disney doesn't. Yes, but Disney has Animal Kingdom, which is 300 acres and officially licensed as a zoo. So Disney is keeping animals as well. You can keep animals one way and you can keep animals another way. And so I think they're a good example of how ideas might be similar and goals might be similar, but the execution, which is usually the UX job, is what separates them.
So what that kind of brings this into a third dimension, right? Where it's not user X or UX, user experience is not just how somebody engages and experiences a website or an app, but really it's how the company interacts with that customer. It's really, multidimensional.
Yeah, kind of the bigger bubble of UX we call CX, which is customer experience. So typically UX is usually limited a little bit more to digital interfaces, sometimes to services and experiences. But then CX is kind of the larger bucket, if we had a Venn diagram, the
Right.
larger bucket of all of your experiences with a brand, how loyal you feel to that brand. So when Disney takes time to serve me food and I don't even complain, and they're giving me a free dessert to apologize for it, that's a very proactive customer experience strategy, which someone on a UX or CX team or together crafted. If dinner is late X minutes, do this. I don't know if that happens at SeaWorld. I don't hang out at SeaWorld. But so there's UX, which tends to be more digital interfaces, and then there's CX, which is probably what you're often thinking more about, that whole experience with the brand, how people feel about that brand, and then we're kind of a subset of that.
Sure. What so we talked a little bit about big companies and these big tech companies, and you said your agency does optimization reports, or just what do you do to help the smaller businesses and entrepreneurs?
So for smaller businesses, we normally start with a service we have called the UX optimization report. And basically, that's me going into your website, because most businesses have a website and very few have apps. But going into your website on my computer and on my phone and screenshotting everything I see and writing commentary of where do I think there are UX problems, how severe do I think they are, and what are some suggestions to improve them, so that whether or not you're hiring us, you still have actionable takeaways of what can I do about this. So the UX optimization report can be a great place to start. It's full of tough love. It tends to run 16 to 40 pages between, based on how deep I go into it and how much stuff I uncover and how many pages you have and things like that. But
Wow.
I'm not usually looking at marketing, so I'm not necessarily looking at the things you are. I'm not usually looking at marketing, SEO, but I might be looking at color. I might be looking at copy. I might be looking at buttons. I'm definitely looking at navigation. Do you make it easy to get from place to place? So there's lots of things that we can look at and hope to improve upon. And then at that point, usually the person who received the report is either going to take that back to their website designer because they feel loyal to that person and they'll run with it. Or sometimes they bring us in for some or all of the suggestions we make. And of course, we can work with a website designer. We don't replace them. We're happy to do the things they don't specialize in.
Right.
So usually we'll come in, for example, sometimes my reports say, you need an information architecture exercise, which means we need to spend some serious hours on your navigation and hierarchy. Your top links stink. You don't have submenus. You don't make it easy for people to find things. They're going to your search bar. They're digging around the footer. So sometimes I'm recommending that. Website designers don't always specialize in what we call information architecture. So we might do that kind of those exercises and testing and then deliver a report that the website person can install. So that's just an example.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So tell me a little bit about your journey, right? So you've shared with us that how you quit your job in San Francisco and how you kind of stumbled into this industry. How did you create PType?
Yeah, so what happened was in 1995 when I created my website design company, it was called As Was, which was a name I had come up for my company when I was 4. and I pretended to have a company, and it was based on the punchline to a cartoon I saw on The Electric Company. Anybody of a certain age, The Electric Company? Yes. So, 1995, I quit my jobs in the music business. I was working weekdays in a booking and management agency and weekends for Donald Fagen of Steely Dan. And I quit those jobs and started my website company. And so that journey landed me directly into grandma's house where I could live for free and and try to build my company up. And I think what helped me succeed at the time were, at the time, website companies thought very local. Like, okay, I'm in Massapequa, Long Island, so I'm just going to find businesses in Massapequa, Long Island. And I started looking for clients who were anywhere because I figured it's the internet, but this was 1995. And in 1996, we landed the Miss America organization as a client. And they would bring me in for the pageants, which is hilarious because I don't wear makeup. I don't like to do my hair. I'm a bit of a tomboy. And they would bring me in for, and all the Texans would go, "Don't you clean up nice?" And I would do the Miss America pageants as the web, I would do live updates during the pageant. This was, all manual HTML, and it was amazing. And then I felt like I was somebody. And then from there, I started partnering with New York City ad agencies who were passing me off to their big clients like Shearing Plow and ING Bearings. And so I got a good start pretty early on, but then it all crashed when everybody got a copy of Microsoft Front Page and thought they were a website designer. So in redefining us in the early 2000s, I started working with eBay sellers on their eBay listings, bringing design and UX to eBay listings. And that blew the roof off. We got mentioned in a Seth Godin book. We really blew people's minds with kind of bringing design and UX to an individual eBay item. And it worked really well, except right around the time of the economic crash of 2008, eBay was trying to get people to use more structured data. And they didn't want you to design your listings anymore. So I said, okay, I got to redefine myself again. And so kind of redefined that right into, you know what, I'll just be a professional UX consultant chick. So
Cool.
that's kind of been a journey. And so since then, I renamed it to PType, short for prototype, because I build so many prototypes. So that's the medium-sized version of that story.
I like the medium. That was perfect. I think
Okay, thanks.
it touches on a lot of really interesting things. And I think there's a lot of, I think anybody in building a business has to be able to evolve quickly. So I like that you did that a couple of times. Right? What's the next big evolution for you? I think you have something coming up that you're launching, right?
That is true. I'm actually launching a few things. So this summer, I'm launching 2 new courses. One course is for non-UX people to learn how to collaborate with UX people, because good Lord, that's a problem. I'm going to be launching a bit of a UX school for people who want to learn UX, because I'm finding right now that trade schools are expensive, master's degrees are long and expensive, and I'm trying to build the better, more affordable, flexible mousetrap. And then in about a month, it got postponed a little, but in about a month, I am going to be launching a mastermind group aimed at entrepreneurs who are already running a business. So we're not really looking for the people who are transitioning, people who are already doing it. We're looking for people who are pro-environment, and we are looking for people who know that their website is important, and know that when it comes to growing your business, you need to be able to hear feedback and challenges. I know I've grown a lot in the last 5 months in the first mastermind group I joined, and that's only because I could hear those things, and I could say, yeah, I'm going to try changing, I'm going to try thinking bigger, and I'm not going to be afraid. So we're building a system that's got more mentoring and more attention to websites and a few other tricks. So that's going to be called, and you're the first to, this is the scoop, you're the first to hear this out loud, it's called Just CEO It.
Very cool.
And which from a trademark perspective, you can have. Nike doesn't sue everybody. So I Googled that. So I did read the trademark database on that. So we're just CEO it. And of course, you know me, I love my short domain names. It's just CEO.it. And we just have a coming soon page up where we're collecting some email addresses for people who want an early invite, but we should be launching in July, if not sooner.
Very cool. I think that's neat. It sounds like you got a lot of really cool things happening. I highly encourage you guys listening or watching, if you happen to be catching the video, go to pty.pe and just immerse yourself a little bit in what user experience is. Oh, there you go. Because I think it's a part that gets forgotten. A lot of times the entrepreneur thinks about, okay, what is the product or service we got to take to the market? And then they start thinking about how to serve the client, and that's great. But there's this bridge that if we don't think about how to get somebody from landing on our website to actually engaging with us, we'll talk a lot about copywriting and design, but think about the user experience throughout that. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And then also check out justceo.it, which I think I know where that domain is. But thank you so much for coming out on the show. It's been really fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Tyler. It's been great and good fun, and hope to see everybody online soon.
So I have one more question though, and that is,
I'll take it.
Yeah. So to me, business is about building the lifestyle we want. What is one item on your personal bucket list you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Oh, holy cats. I mean, as someone who just moved from America to rural Italy to improve my quality of life, or so I believe, obviously for some people, San Francisco might be a better place to live, but I feel like I've kind of just done that, and where it evolves from here will be really interesting, but it's a huge move that I made. Yes, I did get a work visa. I am here legally, but I just remind everybody of that all the time. But I feel like I just did that, and what comes next is just going to be an amazing unfolding. I don't know what's going to come next. I'm in a new country. I'm still learning the language. Everything is new. Every day is amazing and beautiful here. But then again, it's rural Italy. So I think I just did that.
Very cool. I agree. I think you made one of those big life changes, and now you're just enjoying basking in that. I think it's so great. So for all of you out there that are listening, it's your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at bizninja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.